Hello and welcome to the Everything's Black and White podcast with me, Aaron Stokes, and we're here today to give you a little bit of a midday update on transfer deadline day. Plenty of talk about not just incomings and outgoings, but also the Champions League and Adidas as well after that announcement earlier this morning. Thank you very much if you're joining me live on Facebook or on YouTube. Please drop your thoughts and questions in the comments and we'll get through as many of them as we can during this little live. So obviously the transfer deadline closes in under 12 hours time. Eddie Howe was asked about incomings and any chances of late signings earlier this morning at his pre-match press conference. And I'm afraid the answer was one that fans didn't really want to hear, and that is that Newcastle United are done for business in terms of this window. They're finished, they're shut up shop. There won't be any more incomings before the deadline at 11 o'clock tonight, which is not what we wanted to hear. I know a large section of the fan base were really hoping that they were going to sneak one or two more deals over the line, especially given the recent injury to Sven Botman, which we will talk about later in the episode. But I'm just going to read you Eddie Howe's comments from that press conference this morning. He gave us a pretty definitive answer when it comes to transfers and the incomings or the lack of incomings between now and the deadline. He said, this window has been very slow initially. There wasn't a lot of action, but it's quickened up as we get to the deadline. For us, we were able to get our targets in. We've been quite settled and there'll be no late moves for us. We knew when we signed Lewis Hall, we wouldn't sign anymore. With Sven's injury, it's just one injury, and we hope we get him back pretty quickly. We're a lot stronger than we are this time last year. And I don't think you can really argue with that last point. I think Newcastle United are undoubtedly stronger than they were heading into the transfer window. Eddie Howe has got his wish, and that was that he didn't want to lose a bulk of his squad. They've only really lost at the moment Alan St-Maximin from that senior core group of players. Meanwhile, they've added in, some real top quality first team additions as well as some nice youngsters that are going to be bred through. But as I've just mentioned, Newcastle United fans, they always want more arrivals through the door. And unfortunately, Eddie Howe's update this morning was that isn't going to happen. Lots of people thought when Sven Botman was limping off last week against Liverpool, and it looked really, really nasty, that ankle injury that he picked up. Many thought that was going to be the catalyst and spur Newcastle United on to maybe do one more bit of business in defence. But unfortunately, that isn't the case, even though it does look like Sven Botman has picked up some ankle ligament damage. This is what Eddie Howe had to say on Botman this morning. He said, Sven's had a scan. The ankle doesn't appear too good. There's definitely an injury there, but it presents okay. He's been lightly jogging this week. We'll see how he is before making a decision. There's a small chance he could make the squad. Now, reading between the lines after Eddie Howe said that, I don't think we will see Sven Botman in the squad this weekend at Brighton, which is going to be a huge blow. It's going to be a huge opportunity for either Dan Burn or Jamal Lascelles to step into that team, to step into centre-back, if it is true that, Botman isn't going to make it in time for tomorrow's game at the Amex. But Eddie Howe thinks that he has got enough cover at the back. As far as he's concerned, as soon as they got Lewis Hall through the door about 10 days ago, that was it for Newcastle United. They were done for the summer. They were finished with their spending after, an outlay of 120 million on 4 players, although, there is going to be more to come next summer when they pay that upfront fee for Lewis Hall. Let me know in the comments what you think, and let me know if you think they've got enough. Would you have liked to see one more? Where would you have liked them to see them strengthened? And who would you like to see Newcastle United move on before the 11 o'clock deadline? Now, moving on to that 11 o'clock deadline, we're hoping for some, movement in terms of outgoings. Eddie Howe alluded to that this morning when he spoke of a couple of youngsters potentially going on loan. There's also the big push to try and get Isaac Hayden and Jeff Hendrick both off the books, even if that is a little loan deal. We saw Joe White, an up-and-coming youngster from the under-21 squad. He joined Crewe last night, and we obviously already had Jay Turner-Cook moving up to Scotland on loan until the end of the season. It'll be very, very interesting to see what they do with some of those players that joined Eddie Howe's America team over in the States. The likes of Ben Parkinson, Remy Savage, Alex Murphy. Many thought he might be able to get a chance in the first team. He hasn't been in any of those matchday squads so far. And then there's also Lewis Miley, who is obviously impressed at every turn. He looks, wise beyond his years, but is he going to get too much first team football at St James's Park this season? I don't think he will. Will there be any late loan interest in him? We've also been hearing whispers this week that Matt Targett is wanted by a few Premier League clubs. There was interest from Nottingham Forest earlier in the week. They've unfortunately now maxed out their loan quota, so they won't be signing Matt Targett on loan. Fulham also registered an interest, but we understand Eddie Howe is very, very keen to keep him at the club beyond the summer. And I think Botman's injury probably reaffirms that, if you are going to move Dan Burn into centre-back tomorrow at the MX to play on the left of that defence, you're probably going to need Matt Targett to step in, because Eddie Howe alluded to the fact last week that Lewis Hall just isn't quite up to match fitness yet, and he's going to need a couple of weeks before he's fully up to speed. Just diving into the comments here for a second. John Potter says, is there anyone else coming in late, Aaron? Johnny must have just missed the start of the video where I just alluded to the fact that it doesn't look like there's going to be any more incomings. Eddie Howe seems to be settled with the squad that he's got. Truel says, worst case, it's Trippier, Dummett and Burn. That's scary, in my opinion. We need a right back that can assist. That's one thing that Miggy sucks at. If anybody was at the live event that we hosted at the Tyneside Irish Centre this week, we discussed transfers at length, and I think, my point was that I think right midfield, left back, the likes of Dan Burn and Miggy will eventually become squad players, and it won't be this window, but I think, further down the line, it's nothing against them. It's nothing against what they've done in black and white in the last year or 18 months. It's just the fact that I think we do know that in an ideal world, if FFP wasn't a hindrance and Newcastle had all this money to go out and spend, it would be Miggy and Burn that might just be getting upgraded. They're definitely both still fighting for their long-term futures. Sean says, if we get injuries to Wilson, Isak, Gordon and Botman on share, we are doomed. We have no other strikers or cover at the back. We should have signed at least another striker and centre-back. Great news for us. Adidas is back next season. Keep Matt Targett. We will talk about Adidas later in the episode. Just on your point about injuries, it's a really good point, especially when, we talk about the lack of depth up front. I mean, we all know what Callum Wilson's injury record is like. We all know that, if Alexander Isak drops out, then they are looking a little bit light. I've been banging the drum that Anthony Gordon can move into that position ever since he played there for England under 21s over the summer. But I have seen a lot of fans asking for just one more striker, maybe a youngster. Although remember, they do have Goran Cole, who I hope and will eventually become a first-team start in the years to come. Whenever says we also need a creative midfielder. Andrew Musgrove's been banging that drum for another midfielder to come in, ideally a 6. Doesn't look like he's going to get his wish either. Barry Collis says, do you think Miley should be involved in the squad this season? I do. Yeah, I completely agree with Barry. I think Miley's shown every time he's been given that opportunity. He's risen to the occasion. He looked very, very good against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge at the end of last season during that brief cameo. He looked very, very good in the United States. He ran the show when he came on against Gateshead. I'm really, really hoping that he gets his chance in the first team squad a little bit more than he did so last season. And I think he will, given, I was just about to say the Carabao Cup. I'm not too sure whether they're going to be in too many of those clashes this season after drawing City at home. But hopefully, given the fact that they're in 4 competitions, we will see a bit of Lewis Miley in and around the first team. Just back to outgoings then, and I think, as I touched on, it does look like Isaac Hayden and Jeff Hendrick are going to be the 2 that are making way. Isaac Hayden had a medical at Luton on Monday afternoon. That deal fell through about 24 hours later. It's going to be very, very tricky to get him off the books, given the amount of wages he is on, given his lengthy 3-year contract. But Sheffield Wednesday look like they are going to come and take him on a season-long loan deal. Jeff Hendrick he's been linked with a move to Hillsborough as well, although it's unclear if they're going to strengthen with both of those midfielders in the middle of the park at Sheffield Wednesday. But there also has been a lot of late interest for him in the Championship. It would be very interesting to see if they can get him off the books before 11 o'clock, given that both him and Hayden have been with the under-21s in recent weeks. And they were both told at the start of the summer when they came back from their loan spells at Norwich and Reading respectively that they would be playing no part in the future. Let's talk about the Champions League then. We can't go through this live without talking about the news that's been dominating the headlines in the last 24 hours, and that's that Newcastle United have been drawn in the group of death in the Champions League. I think the majority of the responses to that news has been positive. Fans are very, very happy that they're going to be testing themselves against Europe's best opponents. And Eddie Howe shares that view. He says, it took me a few seconds to process the draw. The group stage can be quite complex, and I didn't realise that it was that complicated. When the dust settles down, you look at it with excitement. There's no negativity from us internally towards the draw. It's certainly challenging, but there's some great European games to experience and great places to visit for our supporters. It's a great thing. It doesn't matter who we play. There has to be an attitude of no fear, no doubts. Let's embrace everything it will bring. It will challenge us hugely. So no doubts about the size of that challenge, but bring it on. That is how we feel. And I can see a war flag already being printed with that quote on from Eddie Howe. That has to be the attitude of no fear, no doubts. Let's embrace everything it will bring. So yes, PSG, AC Milan, and Borussia Dortmund will be coming to St James's Park before December. Newcastle United, remarkably with the bookmakers, are second favourites to qualify from that group behind PSG. Then you've got AC Milan and then Dortmund all the way out at a massive 2-1 to get through that group. So yeah, very, very interesting to see whether they can. Newcastle United fans certainly very, very optimistic. They're relishing some fantastic nights on the continent. Certainly there'll be very boozy nights and also some very, very good games of football at St James's Park in the next couple of months. Just diving back into the comments, so we've got Daniel Wilson here saying, I love Fabian Schär, but we need a replacement. Someone faster with the ball against Liverpool took far too long and ended up playing sideways. We should have played it forward when they were hurting for being down to 10 men. Sean David Parkinson says, we should sign that young striker on loan from PSG, who we were linked last summer, Hugo Ekitike. Well, that is a complete blast from the past. We know that Newcastle United were confident that they were going to get him last summer before PSG swooped in and stole him from fellow French club Reims. Very, very interesting to see whether he stays at PSG beyond the window. He's had a terrible time of it so far. He really, really struggled for game time under Christophe Galtier last season, but there's also new management at PSG now, although he has been linked with the likes of Everton and West Ham. So it'll be interesting to see whether he stays at PSG and potentially comes to St James's Park as an opposition player, or whether they'll be up against him in the Premier League. Truel says, just on the Champions League draw, I'm not sure we will get second, but third is a possibility, in my opinion. That's very interesting. Obviously, Newcastle United, if they do finish third, have a chance of dropping into the Europa League, which might give them a chance of lifting that trophy in Dublin next summer. We move on to Adidas then. Another bit of news, obviously, as if the day wasn't going to be busy enough with deadline day and the Champions League. They have announced the worst kept secret of the summer, and that is that Adidas are back as Newcastle United sponsors from 2024-25 onwards. A multi-year deal signed with Adidas, which is going to, completely release the financial shackles that are sort of hampering Newcastle and, making them sort of so wary of FFP regulations and stuff like that. Eddie Howe was also asked about that this morning at his press conference. He says, it brings back memories and positive memories for the supporter base. When you have positive connotations with things from the past, it brings excitement for the future. You want that positivity at all times, and you want the fans to feel aligned with decisions made at the football club. This is a really, really positive step. And I think one line from Eddie Howe's quote there just stands out. You want fans to feel aligned with the decisions made at the football club. And I think that's massive, because Newcastle United have listened to fans. Everybody said, they wanted Adidas back. Everybody's been mocking up those retro kits. Everybody harps on about the good old days in the 90s with the brown ale kits and, Keegan and everything like that. And I think it's going to be really, really exciting to see what they can do kit-wise for Newcastle United. And I think we saw how popular those Castor kits were this season. I think they'll probably sell out twice over when Adidas return from next summer. It'll be very, very interesting to see what sort of designs they have in mind. And look, just financially, it is absolutely huge for Newcastle United. You look around the Premier League and you see that, the likes of Castor, they were only paying 5 to 7 million per season for, sponsorship in Newcastle United's manufacturing. Adidas, they've currently got a 90 million per year deal with Manchester United. They're currently paying 60 million a year for Adidas. Manchester City are getting 65 million from their Puma deal. Nike are paying, upwards of 30 for Liverpool and Chelsea. It's a huge, huge deal financially, as well as having that big sentimental aspect for Newcastle United as well. So very, very positive news, and we're just looking forward to more details on what kits are to come. Just diving into the comments one final time, we've got Dave Askew here saying one central defender down for the weekend, and we are already looking for who we have, and possibly moving Burn around. We need a bit more strength at the back. Dave, I think your sentiments are echoed by a lot of the fans in the comments and, the wider fan base as well. Mick Jones says, crikey, we can only have a 25-man squad. We failed to sell players for a fee, and as soon as we do sell players, fans moan another window where massive money has been spent. I don't think fans are necessarily moaning. I think, if you ask a lot of the fan base, how this window's gone, they'll say that it's, an A or an A plus. I think it's a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Maybe not a 10 out of 10, but maybe, it's very, very high. I think Newcastle United fans are very happy with the business that's being done. I think just Sven Botman's very untimely injury sort of shone a little bit of a spotlight on how they might just be a little bit weak at the back in terms of cover behind Aaron Botman. But Eddie Howe's the boss, and Eddie Howe says that he thinks they've got enough. And finally, Lee Trainer says, what a great time to be a Newcastle fan. And I think that's where we'll end it, because it is. We've had, as I say, a very, very busy 24 hours. We're obviously with the Champions League news, the Adidas news, and obviously some final movement in the transfer window. Stick with us on Chronicle Live throughout the day. We'll have plenty of updates on our website. We'll have more podcasts and YouTube videos to come. We'll also have a little video at 11 o'clock with myself and Andrew Musgrove, just reflecting on deadline day. And it looks like we're going to be talking about outgoings rather than incomings. Thank you very much for watching this Facebook Live or watching it live on YouTube. And we'll speak to you very, very soon.